registered and they continue to operate, what does that mean for them? Are they in breach? What's the impact if they are?
I'll let Ruben answer that question. He has a more softer tone than I do.
Yes, there are penalties built into the law, and they are hard penalties. They're not penalties that can be easily waived. The penalty for not registering is there's an automatic fine of $500, and then there's a penalty of $10 a day thereafter, up to the maximum of $3,000 until you're registered. And again, bearing in mind that registration could take up to a maximum of 30 days. In addition to that, if you register after the deadline, which again, if you're operating a nonprofit organization, you're required to do so, there would be a $300 application fee after July 31st.
Yes.
So that, as you can tell, that adds up really quickly. For those that continue to refuse to register, you will find not only certain organizations in the community taking certain actions, but you'll also find a registrar taking certain actions if, for example, your organization is incorporated as a company. We know we have a lot of what are known as companies registered under Section 80. The registrar could take action to strike you from the register. Those assets would then vest with government. And again, so there's a whole range of penalties. What you'll also find, as I mentioned, in the community, we have relationships with financial institutions, which will terminate those relationships. Again, because your organization is now operating outside the laws of the jurisdiction. And the penalties are in the law to ensure that we have enforceable means. But again, we don't want to use the penalties. We want everyone to come and register. It is not an onerous process. It is not meant to make it hard for you to operate. It is a best practice for us to know the nonprofit organizations operating in the jurisdiction.
Now, we're going to want to obviously ask what sort of entities would qualify or should be registered. But before we do, what about if there is an organization, entity that is now presently conducting itself as a nonprofit, but for whatever reason they decided, we're not going to bother to continue that particular thing that we were looking after. It's maybe being done by something else or someone else. Do they need to notify that they're not going to disband, they're not going to continue, or they just fall away and nobody knows, nobody wiser?
In general, I would recommend it would be a good practice to write to the registrar of nonprofits, even though they're not registered, just to identify that, this organization is closing. We weren't previously registered, but we want you to know that we're closing and this is what we're doing with the assets. Because again, the nonprofit organization law, one of the things we're seeking to achieve in addition to combating terrorist financing is to prevent the dissipation of assets in nonprofit organizations. So it would be a good practice for those that don't have any other type of relationship with the registrar to write to say, we're closing and these assets are going to be used to pay our debts or used to give to another nonprofit organization, etc.
Just advise, just sort of good practice.
Correct.
All right. When we come back, could we ask again to repeat for us the types of entities that should register?
Sure.
Can we also ask about the issue of people? That from time to time we'll solicit from the public funds for certain things. We'll talk about the different categories and see how that would work.
Sure.
For those who are listening, you're talking about the non-profit organizations. The legislation comes into effect. It may affect you and impact you. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Kia Soul passes it to Kia Sportage. Sportage makes a stylish move over to the sleek Optima. Optima then flicks it across to the 7-seat Sorento. Sorento heads it. Goal! Kia!
It's time to score with the entire 2018 Kia lineup at GT Motors. Get up to $3,000 cash back. The first 50 customers will score a World Cup replica football and mascot. Hurry, it's the best thing that's happened to car buyers all year. The 2018 Kia clearance sale, only at GT Motors on Godfrey Nixon Way. Kia, driving football fever.
Wow, looks good. What is that?
Chicken chair.
What did you just say to me?
Chicken chair.
I am not a chicken.
Whoa, I said chicken share. It's from KFC. Bucket of 12 hot wings, 6 pieces of chicken, or 8 tenders. KFC chicken share. Just $12 each.
Oh.
Want some chicken, tenders, or hot wings?
You're sharing your chicken share with me?
The new chicken share from KFC, just $12 each, and it's finger-licking good. Dine at KFC Baytown Plaza, KFC Shedden Road, or KFC at the Strand.
Super Jam Showdown.
Gospel music has gone too far.
Positive Monday. Population Tuesday. Latino Heat Wednesday to Thursday. Back the hands of time.
Supersonic. Slide. Gay Friday. Brack Party Block Top 10 Count to Female Friday.
Radio Cayman Super Jam Showdown. Weekdays 3 to 6. Brought to you by
Leap Diversify.
At Leap Diversify, they are dedicated to your educational pursuits. Visit www.leapdiversify.com.
Leap Diversify. They don't succeed unless you succeed.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. We invite you to be a part of our discussion. Susan reminds me, say, you know, remember to tell people they can also see you. Well, you can see me. I'm performing live every Friday night. No, just kidding. It's on YouTube, she says. Somewhere you go online and you find that thing that's called You Face Your Tube Talk. I don't know. YouTube. Miss Susan will tell you. Just call her. She'll tell you how to get there. Not too particular about it. But there it is. And type in Radio Cayman Live. So when I go back to the show this afternoon, Miss Norman say, now listen to me. You get this thing right. Yeah. It's called FaceTube. I mean, sorry. U-Time. 949-837 or 1-800-534-8255. When you get to be my age and my size, you know, you take lessons sometimes, right? Truly grateful to be able to laugh along and learn together with Mr. Paulinus and Mr. Wilbur Walker, coming gents, as we talk about the non-profit organization. I think there are many wonderful people who continually get together and try to make an impact, not just individually, but collectively. Definitely. Maybe we've heard about it, not quite sure. Why do we want to get organized? We're not a large organization like, and they may name these organizations that are global, or maybe that are local. Could we ask off the bat which organizations that probably should, you know, be registered, or which type of organizations?
Yep. So
all
first,
at once, okay?
Yeah, first and foremost, you need to look at the definition of a non-profit organization in the law. So the law looks at an organization established for specific purposes, whether it be philanthropic, charitable, religious, educational, sporting, or otherwise. But that organization must be soliciting contributions from the public or a section of the public, for the benefit of the public or a section of the public. So again, based on that definition, we have a broad range of non-profit organizations that are captured, or just activities that would be captured. So it ranges from PTAs, certain PTAs, to churches, to other religious organizations. You have sporting clubs, you have sporting associations. You have philanthropic groups, you have charitable groups. So we have a broad spectrum of non-profit organizations in this jurisdiction. I like to, when we did the presentations, I like to tell people, if you're raising funds from the public, you're most likely captured, and then I would give them the exemption. So I'd say everybody's captured unless you're exempt. So I think that's a good way to look at it. I know people tend to say, you know, well, I'm a small organization, or I only collect X number of dollars. Well, the law doesn't look at dollar value or the size of your organization. It simply says whether you're raising funds or soliciting contributions from the public, you're required to register.
All right, if I may ask then, if an organization, whether it's an organization or one or, you know, many, and they're going to be selling something, whatever that thing is, so let's say food. So they're going to have a fundraiser, they're going to sell a plate of food, and then, you know, you can get your meal, but that money is going to go to help something, maybe all of it, or maybe half the expenses. In that instance, is that an organization that would be considered raising funds from the public?
A simple answer, yes. But again, you'd have to dig deeper.
Okay.
So you need to ask, why is the organization established? So again, we have organizations in the jurisdiction that are private organizations. We had a big event over the weekend, Flower Sea Swim. But Flowers Group isn't a non-profit organization. They might have held an event and raised funds to give to a non-profit organization, but they're not established primarily for philanthropic, charitable. Again, so you need to look at why the organization is established and the activities they're doing. So in your example, you may have a church that is doing a fish fry. The church is raising funds through that mechanism, and then the church is established to do those good works or for religious reasons based on the law. So the church would be required to register.
So then if the activity is, say, annual or every 2 years, or just not a daily ongoing thing, some entity somehow organizes itself in order to raise funds for something, maybe for another, maybe for school, maybe for another benefit.
Right.
That entity would not necessarily, even if it's an annual event. So 3 of us have we're professional golfers, we're going to have a golf tournament every year, but that money is going to be given to support a particular charity, maybe education, for instance. Every year, everybody look forward to, the Welcome Innis Invitational. Right?
Yeah.
Now, would that have to be registered as an NPO? If you see where I'm going with this,
yes.
Yeah. So every year that thing's going to happen. We're looking forward to it. People are coming down to participate, whichever. Right?
Okay, so annual event would be considered an ongoing activity. So you're an organization established now to continue to carry on that activity annually. So that is distinct and separate from one-off activities. So one-off activity is an extraordinary activity. Again, we hear of terrible situations in our jurisdiction where someone's house burnt down and there wasn't adequate insurance, so we all get together and donate to an account and they use that. Or similarly with a sick child, that is an extraordinary or a one-off event. So in those situations, that type of entity that is raising funds, or if it's an individual, that's not required to be registered. But in the example you gave, that is an ongoing activity. Even though it's an annual event or semi-annual or biannual, it is something that is going to be carried on in perpetuity. So that is an entity that would need to be registered.
All right. Not to belabor it, certainly not to point fingers at it, but just to be, let's say it's a financial institution, for argument's sake, or something in the financial sector. And they, same thing, every year as part of their PR and their charitable philanthropic nature. Now, this is a for-profit entity. I mean, they're mercenaries, let's just say that, right? But they're going to have this particular thing, and they're going to make sure that the funds go to a particular cause.
Right.
Again, an annual, maybe it's every 2 years, maybe it's every 6 months, but it's a frequent thing, it's on the calendar, and we're going to participate. Whether it's golf, running, bowling, doesn't matter. There's going to be this thing. Will that thing that this, entity is having on this regular basis, will that thing need to be incorporated as a non-profit?
No. Okay, because again, the organization that is holding an event is established not for charitable purposes, as defined in a non-profit organization's law. As you mentioned, that organization is established to, what if it's a financial institution, say a bank, they're established to do banking. They're doing that philanthropic activity as they're giving back to the community. So again, I beg people to read the definition of non-profit organization in the law. You have to be an organization established for. And I just want to clarify, when we say organization, some people confuse this with being a company. An organization can be any entity type. It is simply a group of persons or one individual that has decided, I'm going to operate in this manner and do these types of activities. So you may find persons doing that under the auspices of a company, a partnership, as a sole trader, different types of structures. And that's what we found. Predominantly what we have in a jurisdiction and international is what is known as unincorporated associations of persons, which again is a group of people that have come together, that operate together. They're not incorporated, so they're not a company. We don't have any partnership agreement, so it's not a partnership. But for those types of organizations where we're saying that you need to have some type of constitutional document, which Paul mentioned in what is needed to apply. So you need to have a set of rules governing how your organization operates. It's great that you've come together, but 10 years from now, if two of you leave and 2 more new people come in, can they just say we're not operating like that anymore? Or is it set in your rules that this is how we're operating? If you want to change it, you need to have a general meeting. We need to vote. We need to minute the change. Or is it just, me, Paul, and you decide we're going to change it tomorrow?
Now, as we speak to Mr. Paul in this Mr. Wilbur, welcome. Of course, the phone lines are open if you want to call and just confirm, clarify. Maybe there's something that you were not quite sure. Well, there's an opportunity. 949-8037 or toll free with the compliments of Flo at 1-800-534-8255. And then if they WhatsApp, I'll give it to Mr. Wilbur. He can read it. 925-3261. No, I'll read the WhatsApp. With that, now, you've stressed collecting funds from the public.
Right.
So a group of individuals or what have you decide that that's amongst themselves. They're going to throw money into the pot every so often to give to something. Not interested in getting it from the public. They'll do whatever activities amongst themselves. But they're organized. They're going to be charitable and philanthropic. They're going to help in different ways. Are they subject to the NPO legislation?
Well, that's a good question, and there's a straightforward answer, and still there's a technical answer as well. If you are a club established with memberships, and you're generating funds strictly from your membership, and you decided, you know what, we're going to give this money to another charity, then you don't have to register. If, however, you are a bunch of individuals who decide that we're going to pool our money together, in addition to that, we get sponsorship from elsewhere, from corporate sponsorship or from somebody else who's not a member of our group, well then that's from the public, and you don't need to register.
Okay. Just again, because I know that just talking to people, there are times when I get a few questions and I thought, well, Mr. Wilbur shared something that I believe you should be registered. So just ask. So in your example, Mr. Innes, the group of individuals who ordinarily just collect money from themselves for whatever reason, right? They get together every week, every month, and they just pool some money and they're giving it genuinely to legit purposes. But they're all business people. So the lady might say, listen, my company can throw 5,000 or 500, and then the gentleman might say, well, you know what, I can also throw in. So somehow getting money, sponsorship from these individuals individually and through their companies to support this thing. Would that be splitting hairs, or would that potentially put them at a need to be registered?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. But once you go outside the membership, you are required to register, even if the individual is the owner of that company. And the reason I say that is because a company has its own legal personality.
Yes.
So a company is viewed as a different person as opposed to the individual, even if the individual is ultimately the owner of that other company. So again, in that scenario you gave, they would have to register as an NPO because they've gone outside of membership to raise funds. And once you go outside of membership, then you're into the public or a section of the public.
Fair enough. I want to read verbatim WhatsApp that came through. It says, what about MLAs who solicit for public funds on radio for quote-unquote a good cause? Will they be looked upon as an NPO?
So again, that's an interesting question. Well, I'm not sure in what particular instance the question is raised, but in most instances I've found when an MLA is advocating for funds or public funds to be spent on something, they're not advocating for the funds to be given to them and they spend them, but it's to go to another organization. Whatever organization they're advocating for, then that organization should be registered to receive public funds or government funds or funds from any other donors. Again, so once you're going outside the membership of that organization to raise funds in any way, shape, or form, that entity should be registered.
Okay. Before we go to the break, let's stick on the politics. I feel like, on that show with that fella, 500, Jeff, political parties, would they be subject to NPO legislation?
Currently, the law carves out an exemption for entities that fall under a government law or has a government entity as its principal regulator. So at this point in time, any entity that falls under a government agency, entity, or government law is not required to register. So in short, no. Political parties don't need to register at this point.
We don't see, well, it's seemingly formalized what they see in other jurisdictions like the U.S. political action committees. So if and when we were to get to that point, would those things, in absence of any other legislation, would those things be subject to potential NPO legislation?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason political parties fall out, as I mentioned, they fall under the elections office, under the elections law. But anything not falling under a piece of legislation or a government entity, yes.
Okay. We'll pause. We'll take our final break for this segment. Come back, you guys continue more with us. Anybody has a question or comment, you just want to hear Susan's voice, 949-837. Chances goes, hello, this is Susan. No, 949-837 or 1-800-534-8255. See, the cameras should be over there to see her smiling, not over here. I think we're going to change that around. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Is this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Every Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. Radio Cayman Super Jam Show, the #1 drive time entertainment show for your radio, featuring Will Sinatra.
Now, sound is everything.
Enjoy a mix of pop, hip-hop, reggae, and calypso, and an entertainment trivia section. The Super Jam Show is fueled by the proud sponsorship of the Cayman Islands Football Association. CIFA, building a better future for Cayman football.
Important notice for all contractors, including general, civil, residential, building, and trade contractors. The Department of Planning would like to inform you that in order to pull permits and request inspections, your company must be registered with the Builders Board by July 31st, 2018. Failure to register with the Builders Board will prevent you from seeking permits and inspections. Fees and applications can be found online at www.planning.ky. All applications and fees for all contractors must be submitted by July 31st, 2018.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecast, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks for joining us as we talk about the NPO legislation and the compliance in the General Registry. Mr. Paul Innes, together with Mr. Wilbur, welcome the Minister's Policy Officer. Gents, I really appreciate that the amount of work, the time, the effort. I say this sincerely. I like people who are not only competent but they're committed. You've been available either on the road or in your offices. You've been here in the media circuit trying to get people. Now, with great respect, you've referenced that you're doing this for a particular reason. There's going to be a cost and a consequence if those of us who are part of non-profits who are not compliant, and on the register by the end of July.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Cost to register if you decide to move forward after, but also the penalties.
Yep.
All right. Well,
indeed.
Football season is on, boy. Nobody wants to take a penalty unless, of course, it was messy. I shouldn't go there.
No, don't go there.
No, you don't want to say the Argentinian fans.
No. Hey, I got a few of them in my household. That's okay. Susan says no problem, man. I can stay in the office here all night. But hey, that's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
So no penalties, right? All right.
But I want to focus on some of the benefits of registering. I think people need to understand, we're not trying to make it hard for you to continue to carry out the good works. Once you register, you get an electronic certificate of registration. It'll help you prove to anyone that's asking, this is my nonprofit status. And such a certificate is good for many things, not only locally. We have certain breaks in certain pieces of legislation, but we've talked to nonprofit organizations that have traveled and, when they're leaving their hotel, the hotel has told them, well, we could give you your tax back if you can prove that you're a nonprofit organization. And those are some of the difficulties they've had. They didn't have an official government document that said, I am a nonprofit. So now you get a certificate of registration stamped by the registry, sent to you electronically, so you can have it at your disposal to send around, to print if you need it. That proves that you're a nonprofit, a legitimate nonprofit organization in the Cayman Islands.
And even though you registered here, in that instance that they're overseas in their jurisdiction for some reason, that tax that is being assessed, they can get their money back.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's significant.
Yeah. Similar with donors to their organizations. I mean, international donors, especially those from the U.S., can usually claim a tax rebate if they've donated to a nonprofit organization. The difficulty they have when they donate to Cayman again is, how do I prove that our organization I gave funds to was a legitimate nonprofit organization?
Okay. Could we ask, and certainly very mindful of your time and have you to share with us as you wish, right? But from the perspective of the whole issue of getting registered and you referenced a couple of things. I would like to maybe first ask this question that comes in. The question is, if the fee that is payable now is an annual fee and this time and then they pay next year, the fees to get registered, is there a fee first off for non-profits?
Well, the fee starts the 1st of August. We're still in the transition period. And the transition period, you're actually being allowed to register for free.
Okay.
That's one of the benefits, and that's one of the reasons why we're encouraging people to take advantage of this benefit right now. But as of the 1st of August, you have to pay a one-time $300 registration fee. There's no annual return fee.
Okay.
It's just a one-time fee.
So if you get it now, it's free and free thereafter forever.
And free thereafter.
If not, you paid out one-time annual fee?
One-time $300 registration fee.
Okay.
And then there are no annual return fees associated with being an NPO in these islands.
Okay. Now, the process of register, you shared an unincorporated, association, so one or multiples thereafter, or you can do it as a company.
Yes.
There are different ways you can do it.
Trust, partnership, unincorporated body or association of persons. You can be a company under the company's law. That is a Section 80 company limited by guarantee or ordinary company. Or you can be set up as a trust or partnerships, obviously with a trust deed or a partnership agreement.
Okay. Now, obviously, in the end of those, there needs to be what you talk constitutional documents, the amendment acts, as it were.
Yes.
Tells what the company, what the nonprofit can and can't do, and how it does what it does.
Right.
Okay.
So for each entity, there's a constitutional document. For companies, that would be the memorandum and articles of association. If you are an unincorporated body of persons, that would either be your bylaws or your constitution. If you're a trust, that would be a trust deed or a partnership or partnership agreement. But we also have the sole trade as well, and they're also required to provide us with a constitution.
Right.
And as Wilbur said earlier, the constitution really is about telling us how you intend to manage yourself, how you intend to manage your internal run-ins. We want to see that there's a level of professionalism. It matters how small or how big the NPO is. But the fundamental thing at the end of the day is that the funds that you collect do not belong to you, they belong to the public. And we're holding entities to a basic standard, that is the right internal controls, the right type of corporate governance, management associated with these entities. And that is not entity specific, it is not size specific, it is total NPO specific. We want for people to understand that there's a level of professionalism. And again, this is not about making the process onerous at all, because there are entities out there right now that are doing these things and have been doing these things for many, many years. We're just formalizing the process.
Now, many non-profits will say, well, they raise money for charitable, philanthropic, for these good things. They don't really have any extra money for anything else. Most is volunteer. We understand that under this legislation, the general registrar needs to be notified. of any changes in, I call them the officers, the people who are running the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the case?
Yes, it is.
All right. And whether it's a PTA or whether it's a service club, it may be every year, every 2 years. There are frequent changes.
Right.
Sometimes it may be 10 people.
Yes.
That is on the new membership, the new executive.
Mm-hmm.
They have to pay when they do?
It's a $25 fee per change.
Okay. So $25 fee subject to maximum X. And some form that you'll share with us?
Correct. If you're making 11 or more changes at once, it's a capped fee at $300. And I know it's a little concerning for non-profit organizations that didn't have to pay a fee before. But just to say that prior to this law, there were only 2 ways to be identified as a non-profit organization in the jurisdiction. One was a church under the Churches Incorporation law, and the second and most prevalent was being registered under Section 80. Now, being registered under Section 80, one of the conditions that was usually placed on you to be registered was that you had to apply to Cabinet for a change. Each application for each change was to be accompanied by a $500 non-refundable application fee. So again, we had to strike somewhat of a balance where, you know, that $500 fee no longer applies to those Section 80s once they register, but there's a $25 fee across the board per change. So we have been getting some feedback on that, and it is a difference and it is a change, and it might be something prohibitive in certain circumstances. So it's something we're open to hearing feedback on, but there is a $25 fee per change as it currently stands.
All right. So PTAs or any other entity, just use them as an example. Mm-hmm. They'll be subject. Service clubs likewise.
Yes.
All right. Maybe like Steve Martin, it's cheaper with a dozen, huh? Sure. All right. And in the closing, moments of this discussion, Mr. Innes, anything finally you want to share with the listeners?
From me, they've obviously been an increase in the applications that we've been getting. We want to encourage the NPO community to continue to get your applications in, but we're obviously concerned with the quality of the applications because we've been forced to reject quite a bit of applications because of the lack of information being provided. The form speaks of physical address, PO box, and a KY code for the entity, as well as for the individuals, along with a signature, an email address, and a telephone number. The other thing that we're seeing quite often is that the IDs are being submitted, but they aren't being certified. So those are the 2 main reasons why we're forced very often to reject the applications and send them back for more information. So we're asking applicants to be, just ensure that you have all the information. If you give us the information at one time, then we can get the applications processed a lot faster as opposed to having to send it back out. Because remember, every time it comes in, that 30-day period starts over. And we want to avoid that. So the less delays and the less rejections we get, the faster we can get your application processed.
So with that then, color copy is certified?
Yes, sir.
Get all the constitutional documents, the controlling officer, I think you said?
Yes, please.
All right. And the application form?
That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
So not really a lot of things. I mean,
no.
You make it sound almost easy.
It is very easy, Sterling.
All right. So easy, even a caveman or talk show host could do it.
Of course. Let's all get it popping. We can get it done.
All right. Mr. Welcome, what about you, sir?
I just want to reiterate what Paul said. Paul and I are available to answer questions. Please email or phone us. I think everybody out there should have our contacts by now, but if not, I'm sure you can repeat them when we're off air or when we leave the studio. Yeah. I just want to say we're providing a lot of assistance. If you are an organization that don't have bylaws now, we provide templates to help you form those. General Registry continues to do sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 7 p.m. in their lobby on the ground floor of the government building. So if you're going through the application process and you're running into some issues, bring your documents in and they will get you registered. They will set you up online and show you how to put in all of your information. So again, we don't want this to be a case where someone gets left behind because enforcement is always more difficult. So please come and register. Again, contact Paul or contact myself. I always use a tagline, call Paul. The Paul knows everything. So, I mean, if you guys can't get Paul, then call me. But call him first.
Call Paul.
Because he know the answers.
Yeah, man. Fly away, Peter. Fly away, Paul.
Fly away, Peter. Fly away, Paul. Come back, Peter. Come back.
All right.
Yeah. So we're here to help. It's not. We're not trying to make it hard for you guys.
All right. Thanks very much, gents. Thank you. All right, to our listeners, stay tuned. I'm going to come back. More Talk Today.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Brack and Little Cayman. Your station, your voice. All things Cayman. One radio, many people. This is home.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. Headline. These are the biggest stories right now.
Another bar fight over the weekend. In addition to the stabbing in central Georgetown early Saturday morning, officers with the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service were called to an area near the Pirates Cove Bar in East End on Friday night. The victim in this attack was taken by private car to the hospital for treatment of a wound not considered to be life-threatening. Police are looking for any witnesses to an altercation between at least two men last Friday night, which is believed to have occurred just outside Pirates Cove Bar before 10 p.m. Call the Bodden Town Police Station at 947-2240 if you have any information about the incident. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, Italy's right-wing populist interior minister Matteo Salvini has prompted a new outcry by saying he wants a census of the Roma community that would lead to non-Italians being deported. After a chorus of criticism, he said his only aim was to protect Roma children. There are at least 130,000 Roma or Gypsies in Italy, and many live in unlicensed camps on city outskirts. Stock markets have fallen around the world in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's latest tariffs threat to China. The Dow Jones was down more than 300 points, or 1.6% at the open after Asian and European markets fell sharply earlier. Mr. Trump has threatened to put tariffs on an extra $200 billion of Chinese goods, sparking fears of a trade war. And Senegal got Africa's first win of the World Cup with a 2-1 victory over Poland in Moscow today. The team was helped by two fluky goals, a deflection, and a score by a player who was apparently unnoticed by the Poland defense. Russia is now about to take on Egypt for their second Group A match after beating Saudi Arabia 5-0 in their first game. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman. We are Radio Cayman, and this is how we wake you up in the morning. Praise time on Radio Cayman.
Sing your praise to the Lord. Come on, everybody, stand up and sing one more. Hallelujah, give your praise to the Lord. We are united in Jesus Christ. We are the soldiers of the land.
Praise time.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
There's a meeting up in heaven. Roll call. It's a name with the name in the Lamb's Book of Life. Roll call, brother, sister. Roll call. If you don't stop shouting, if you don't stop dancing, we're going to put you out of our church.
Praise time.
Jesus in the morning, yeah.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
Your song flows through my lips. Your work moves through my hands. Your thoughts stay on my mind. Live in me.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. It's open line 9498037 or toll free with the compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. And you can join us online if you want. Go to YouTube and type in Radio Cayman streaming live, something like that. It'll take you somewhere there and you'll be able to see it. I'll eventually get used to it, but until then, hey, you have to just listen along. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255, toll free with the compliments of Flow. Call and share your thoughts with us. Again, a very special thanks, not just for their company and the opportunity that they have, sort of put in a great effort to bring in to the public the information, almost the ease and convenience with which to get your non-profit organizations registered, not just to be compliant with the legislation, but to benefit from what the legislation offers. As you've heard from Mr. Wilbur, you're a non-profit, you've away for some reason, you're staying at a hotel. Quite possible the hotel might be able to refund your tax because you have registered official documentation from the government that confirms your status, and that way you can maybe save yourself a few bucks, put that money into the objects of the association. It's not always easy to run non-profits when they're about trying to raise money to benefit the community. Now, the downside to that, if you don't get registered in time and you continue to operate, well, you run foul of the law, subject to the penalties. They could be very costly. If you decide to get registered after, well, you have to pay the fees as well. So there is presently no fee. Thereafter, there'll be the $300 fee, but irrespective, there'll be no annual fee. That's the plan that stands right now. It's open line though, 949-8037, or toll free with the compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. We had an opportunity to listen to a very short presentation. It's probably no more than 35-37 minutes. It wasn't even quite 40 minutes. It's somewhat informal from the perspective of how it was organized and the like, but very specific. Two individuals decided to assemble a few people with a view to talking about Cayman, its current position, and the changing perception that some may have. During the discussion, someone said, "Well, have you heard? There have been more arrests in relation to sort of alleged corrupt practices." Part of why we share this is that the two individuals were saying that we seem to believe that Cayman is still this place that time forgot, that we're not known on the world stage. For the most part, when it comes to tourism and the like, still exotic to some people. They've never been there. Still, tens of millions of people, maybe even be hundreds of millions of people. Still a case when it comes to our business practices, where we are. But in that small circle of circles, we're very much known. And they're saying, hey, what are we doing? Well, we'll tell you more about that. But first, let's just join this caller. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. You're on Talk Today. Hello, good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon, welcome. All right. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Hey, thanks for trying. Hopefully we can get you connected up. Those who want to. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Call and share your thoughts with us as you so choose. It is open line here for the next few minutes as we take your calls. Now, the two individuals were saying that with Cayman, are we conscious of what is happening? And without question, many places, many people still not sure. But those who do probably are very, very, very familiar with who we are. And do they have the right perspective of what we are? And some may still be influenced by that image that they've seen in Hollywood, for the different movies and what they're hearing increasing in the media. Not just from the pundits who seemingly are organized to present Cayman in the minds of these two individuals in a negative light, not necessarily in an accurate light. But we're giving them increasingly more fuel because of the behaviors of our people. And their concern was, have we now arrived at a point in our history where our people no longer understand that there is an expectation of the way we should conduct ourselves. And I really appreciate the opportunity to sit and listen, to have, for the first time, perhaps see where people have taken, and what seemingly a lot of you perhaps do on your own or through your own circles, sort of comb the international media for references to the country, and to see how much of it isn't always that positive. Now, the tourism initiative may continue to be effective, but it has to be balanced with how people are perceiving the country in relation to its safety, to its obligations in the financial sector, towards good governance and fighting terrorism and the like. And as these two individuals shared, we don't appreciate how connected they are and how we can be impacted. 1-800-534-8255. Let's go to our phones and try it once more. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I heard what you were saying there about the kind of international perception. It wasn't originally what I was calling for, but I kind of heard it just before I made the call.
Yeah.
The international perception thing, I've been saying for years, we need some kind of version of the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, where we actively, I would say, actively defend ourselves on the global stage. I mean, starting with movies and TV, every single last one of them paints us as some kind of, cesspool haven for crime.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where you would start, and then because I think the public perception drives the political perception rather than the other way around. In many other countries, leading to attacks from places like the United States and parts of Europe and so forth. In other terms of international viewing, every time I hear about some elderly tourist dying while snorkeling here, I hear another nail going in a coffin. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that we are continuing to allow this to happen. I don't know. I've never heard of any initiative to find some way to address this, whether it's through health screenings or putting nurses on boats or something. Something has to be done to stop these people from dying, because sooner or later we're going to press our luck far enough that that's going to be a real massive problem for us. So in terms of international viewership, I think crime is certainly a bad thing, but we're not anywhere near the top of countries as far as crime goes, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But the dying tourists and the financial services defamation, I think we definitely need to address those.
Now, from the perspective of the individual's safety, we want to make sure that they have a good time here, but that they're safe. What do you think we can do, first and foremost, to make sure that when they go diving, snorkeling, that they are safe, and when they come back, that they can tell the story?
I think it may sound draconian, but I think we need a blanket ban on these snorkeling trips by anybody over probably 60. I mean, again, I know it sounds draconian, but maybe you put an exception in there for some kind of health clearance. They can go to a nearby clinic and get a quick checkup. I know they do checkups like that for divers. So we can certainly do it for swimmers. And if they clear, fine, then they're informed, and we have some peace of mind on our side that this person is healthy enough.
Okay.
But if they aren't willing to do that, then we say, sorry, we can't accommodate you.
But what about the operators? I mean, they are respectful. I can think of some operators who take people out, who are 60, 70, 80 plus, and they go and they make it back safely. But then the operators, and I say this without fair contradiction, I'm thinking about specifically the Caymanian operators, the boys that went to school with me, and their fathers, who pay attention to their customers on board, and who just don't throw them overboard and with 100 others and say sink or swim.
I agree with you for the most part there. I mean, I'm actually related to some of the bigger local dive and
water sports
operators.
Right.
I'm actually related to some of them, so I know that they do a good job. But I think we can all agree that in the last decade or so, those boats have become increasingly overloaded, and even those that are more focused on safety and trying to be a little bit more reasonable about it, ultimately it's about economics, and the more people you put on the boat, the better your profit margin.
Right.
So the economic pressures...
Sorry, could that be part of the way to address it then, that this whole issue of the carrying capacity, the overloading, the safety, and I'm just looking at it from that perspective, because I think you're onto something that we have been remiss, and we're not looking at what our images perceive internationally, whether it's financial, whether it's a tourism product. But as we talk about the safety, could we say that you have a boat out there with 100 people or 300 people? Can you honestly, with one operator or two operators or three operators, whatever the number is that you have on board,
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, there's no single silver bullet for this entire problem. It's going to take a multi-vectored approach to attack it, and one of those would certainly be being much more stringent in controlling the load on these boats that are going out, and much more strongly regulating the passenger to crew ratio, so that you don't have 2 or 3 deckhands overlooking 300 people on one of these boats. There's no possible way you can see to the safety of that many people with that few people. It just is impossible. So I think through screening, through increased regulation of how many people you can have on board and how many people are looking after those, and perhaps mandating having some sort of ambulance boats out there near where the place is, so that you actually have trained emergency medical personnel in the area that can actually respond much more quickly, because people don't die in 30 minutes, they die in 2 minutes. And the longer you take to get to them, the lower the chances of living. So, I mean, I think through all these various things, and maybe some things I haven't thought of, we can reduce this. I know you can't account for somebody dying entirely, it just happens, but we can certainly lower the risk.
Well, I think you're onto something there when you say maybe have, out there on the sandbar in particular, position medics for a period of time. That might be something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, the boats are only out there a few hours a day, so we can certainly manage that.
Yeah, or we could, even be more draconian and just ban, all foreign operators out there altogether, and only leave it to, West Bayers and Northsiders. I mean, just a thought.
Well, I don't want to quite go that far, but I think anybody that we invite onto this island, we are responsible for their safety while they're here, and it looks bad on us that we're letting these people die and we're not doing anything about it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are measures, some of those larger operators there, take out, as you said, hundreds of people. What are we required of them to make sure that, they put 100 people in the water, they're actually taking back 100 people on board? Should they be required to have some sort of on the life vest that they issue each one, some sort of device that, checks and tracks their people? I mean, it's something to consider without making it expensive for the operator or for the consumer, but to put safety as a paramount thing.
But do you mind if I mention what I was originally?
Yes, sir. I was going to ask you the same thing. Yes, go ahead.
Right. Well, originally it was for your previous topic when you were talking to the people with the
MPO.
Yeah, the MPO thing. If there's anything that governments have excelled at since the Egyptians first scribbled on papyrus, it's making lists. Right. That's what writing was literally invented for, was to make lists. So governments excel at making lists of things, and in this case, we're collecting a list of these nonprofit organizations. But the thing is, people make lots of lists and they put them in drawers and on shelves and in books, but we don't often read the deeper context in the list that we're making. In this case, what we're getting is a beautiful list telling us about the nonprofit organizations in Cayman. What we should use that data to do is figure out what these types of nonprofit organizations are doing, because that tells you where the gaps are in coverage from the public systems we have in place, which are responsible for taking care of the citizenry. Now, the government can't fill every need. It absolutely cannot. But if you have 50 NPOs that are all dealing with, athlete's foot, then that's a problem that in the populace that needs to be addressed, and it's certainly within the remit of the government to address that particular problem. Now, I'm using athlete's foot facetiously in this case, but if you have 30, 40 organizations that, dedicated to feeding starving children, well, while it's nice that charities are willing to fill that gap, we should never allow that gap. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
As you said, whether it's athlete's foot, starving children, or somehow, related to the wellness and health and benefit of, children or young people, if they're large organizations, and you have to wonder, is it being addressed, and where's the government, right?
Yeah, I mean, charities exist to perhaps fill in the cracks where something is maybe too specialized. Maybe there's only 2 or 3 or maybe 4 families on the island dealing with this particular issue. That's a little far for a government to, change all the machinery in order to deal with that particular problem. That's a scope-wise, that's manageable by a charity. But when you have perhaps dozens of charities dealing with a problem, that's not a crack, that's a chasm.
Yeah. Well, it is something I think where we look at not just public policy, but what it is that the future is going to look like. I always appreciate when you share things; it gives us a chance to think. Is that a problem, though? We're not thinking enough of the Cayman of today, and I say that in light of what you shared, but also in light of the presentation where 2 individuals took what I would imagine a fair bit of time putting together their short presentation and just saying how do you think Cayman is seen internationally? And for some of us, we think, oh, well, not many people know about us. Well, that's probably true. But those that do, what is their view? Are we this safe, wonderful, exotic place? Or are we this place in the jungle, in a hut somewhere, and people run around with grass skirts? I mean, that might still be the perception of some.
I think when Cayman is generating as little international news as it is generating, we have to be real careful about what kind of international news is being generated. Because if somebody hops on the internet, they're not going to find out about, some cute calf born at the agriculture show that we might have in the papers here. They're going to hear about some young kid getting shot because that's what's going to make the news.
Right. And are we using that information properly to make sure that we don't hide it and deny it? We just ensure that we respond properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hearing me out, and I look forward to seeing if anybody else has an opinion about this.
Well, thank you so much for always sharing, man. I always appreciate it. This is the callers, perspective like callers like that help us to start to think, maybe ask questions. And as the caller shared, the idea that if there is, for instance, a particular NPO that is doing something, and then all of a sudden, in years to come, you've got 10 or you've got 100 doing likewise. Are we missing something? Are we addressing the root cause? Now, are we also looking at what we can do to ensure the safety of our visitors? 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. Looking at a couple of things that came through while the caller was sharing on our, and it's interesting. This particular perspective here shared by this listener who was saying, hey, listen, are we understanding that Cayman no longer is this charm, this gem, that there's a lot of competing interests and a lot of things that are playing sort of behind the scenes. I want to read it some more, but let's go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. You want to talk today?
Dwayne, number 1, you Kingston.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Listening to you, that's the best answer for me to give you.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
As I told you before, I listen every day. That don't mean second call.
Well, sometimes that's how we learn,
Yeah, well, it was something what the man was saying a while ago about people going out in boats and swimming, diving thing.
Yes,
was he talking just about divers?
Not generally. I mean, divers and snorkelers in particular. Yeah.
because that's why I called. I thought he was just talking about the dive boats.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I was going to say, the people that are dying have died, and they just got no water snorkeling. Maybe that's where government need to look certain places and have a lifeguard there during the day anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Nighttime you go, to your problem. But have someone there in the day that if anything happens, even before the ambulance, the thing can get there, the person is trained and know what to do with the CPR and different thing and try and help before the emergency service can get to them. That way they might be able to save them.
Now, with that, I mean, if we're going to have that, how do you think we would pay for that? Because it's going to cost something. I mean, how do we pay for that?
How you pay for it?
Yeah.
Well, you tell the hotels they have to give you $50 a month each one, or $25, whatever it is, something.
Okay.
But how are you going to pay for the person's life?
No, you can't. I mean, that life is...
Aye.
Right. So the reason why I ask is that there are those immediate who say, well, yeah, you want this, but who's going to pay for it? And how it's going to be, is that a new tax? Is it something that you take on board, and then the different aspects of it, including liability? I mean...
We don't need no more tax. Just tell them throw in a couple of dollars and look after the guests and make sure. You have certain areas of east and down and west and all, but north side all, but where they go snorkeling. Have someone there during the day. And then, even if you're going to do it for 5 days for the week then, don't worry, specialize too much in that Monday. You worry about that Saturday. Because that's when you find a lot of people out there. And I think they should put one Cayman back to around the public beach.
So just have it, now would you have it from sun up to sundown, or would it only be...
say from 8 to 8. 8 to 6, put it that way.
Okay.
From 8 to 6.
All right, so...
Because nowadays, sun is, more sunlight anyway.
Yeah.
People will go out there, even say 6:30, and still go snorkel and thing, and then try to get back in before we get that.
So just before sunset, and then, maybe 7, 8 o'clock in the morning when people really... The cool of the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then have someone that make up, be someone that is trained and know what they're doing. Like I said, with that CPR thing, that they can help the people. You can call emergency, but by the time they get there, they can be gone if nothing is done to help them.
That is true. Well, okay. I think we're seeing increasingly more and more people like yourselves asking about that. Do we need to have lifeguards, and do we need to have, more of those resources, nearer coastline, maybe even just slightly offshore at some of the more popular spots, something to think about.
Yeah. Anyway, I just said throw him a 2 cent there to make him know still listen to you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Makes my day.
Hey, boy, last Saturday I had a show.
Yeah. Especially for the long weekend, huh?
Tell me, I mean to tell you that later we're out of it some first class things.
Well, she must be from that part of the world as a good man.
Don't tell nobody, because the government know them might steal her. Bye.
Have a good afternoon, sir. All right, we're going to pause and take a break. When we come back, we invite you to be a part of the discussion on our schedule. Get a chance to, in partnership with the Health Services Authority, talk about some hurricane preparations, focus on medication. Well, we'll see how that works out. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
King Sports Center's Art of Fun Summer Camp is back from July 3rd to August 3rd. Now in its 14th year, the Art of Fun Camp is ideal for kids aged 5 through 10 with activities from football, basketball, dodgeball, squash, rock climbing, arts and craft, dance, singing, and more. Your child can stay cool while having fun in a safe and secure environment. For more info, email kings.brebanks@gmail.com. That's kings.brebanks@gmail.com. Or call 946-KING, like King's Sports Center on Facebook, and you can also find them on Instagram, or call 946-5464. King's Sports Center, providing you with all your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
Headlines.
All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News.
Headlines.
Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
South Coast Bar and Grill up in Breakers, man, that is the place. For traditional Cayman cuisine, oh, you will love the taste. At South Coast Bar and Grill, we got conch and lobster and turtle stew. And every Sunday, come out with your family for the barbecue.
Join us for Father's Day lunch and dinner from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. On the menu will be Cayman lobster, stew turtle, fried crab, stew elk, stew conch, grilled grouper, local stew beef, and barbecue chicken.
Cuisine, the talk today is South Coast Bar and Grill.
CUC advises customers in Mount Pleasant and the Shores areas in West Bay that they will experience interruptions to their electrical service on Friday, June 22nd between 9 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. Areas affected include all customers on Meadow Avenue, Broca Close, Up the Hill Road, Coppice Lane, Glade Drive, Bonneville Drive, Adonis Drive, Shorelink Terrace, Bayshore Drive, Shorescape Lane, Shorewinds Trail, Shoreview Point, Shoreline Drive, and Shoreline Circle. Motorists are asked to drive with caution when utilizing these roads, as CUC will have a number of vehicles and personnel in this area. CUC apologizes for this interruption, which is necessary to facilitate the upgrading of lines and poles to provide access for telecommunication companies offering high-speed fiber to customers in these areas. For more information on the outage and streets affected, please contact CUC's customer service team at 949-5200 or email service@cuc.ky.
Radio Cayman's financial news covering banking, investments, stock markets, and more. Local and international financial news brought to you during the 6 p.m. news hour by Fidelity Bank. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. It's open line 949-8037 or toll free with the compliments of Flo at 1-800-534-8255. Call and share your thoughts with us as we invite you to be a part of a discussion. Now, the other day we had a chance to talk to a couple of individuals who were of the view that we're not concerned sufficiently about the cost of living in this country. We talk openly and sometimes, in her view, not necessarily with the level of insight that we have when we refer to people in some countries, making less than $1 a day, or they only make $50 for the month, or they're being paid in Cayman, $800 for the month. And someone then would quickly jump in and say, well, I remember working in 1970 or 1980 and making $300, for the month then. Now, the challenge that she shared is that we are probably not as willing to acknowledge the significant inflation, the increase in prices that we've seen over the last 30 or 40 years, or even over the last 10, 15 years. And the idea that there are people in this country, for some reason we believe that they can make $1,000 a month, support themselves here, and then support their families or their dependents back home, wherever that is. The fact that they can do that they're pooling their resources, that they're able to somehow accomplish that behavior, are we paying attention to what that may be doing to them and to our country? And it's interesting how she presented it. She said, on one hand, we're acknowledging that these individuals have that seemingly ability to sacrifice. Maybe for them, there is no choice. Just like the seafarers that when they left Cayman, it was not an easy task. Not just leaving their families behind, but the jobs that they did. The amount of money that they made then may have been a lot for our economy at that time, but relative to what they were being paid compared to other, of the nationals on the ship, may have been less. So that ship owner was probably looking to crew his ship for as lower labor cost as possible. No different today when we look at how some businesses conduct their affairs. The seamstress says that's happening here in this country. Now she shared that if we were looking at Cayman today and we were considering the cost of living and what salaries people would need to make, do we have a reasonable understanding and do we have a semblance of confidence in our statistics? Let's go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Yes, Dwayne. Good afternoon. I don't normally call, but I like to listen.
Well, thank you for listening and certainly appreciate your call.
Today I have to call you because, one of the things that trouble me, I know you kind of switched from the snorkeling thing, but, to get in my piece into that, what I've said before, and I still say again and again, we can't put lifeguards on every corner of the beaches in Cayman. The reason why, I'm going to show you an incident. Somebody can go diving at Cayman, and if they see fit and they would like to go diving by the Frank Sound dock or by the Old Man Bay launch and ramp, they're entitled to do that. What I suggested long ago and still suggesting today, we should get some Caymanians who need work, train them in CPR, train them in the life rescue, and they can, for instance, somebody's coming down who's over 50 or so. They, the travel agent can say to them, listen, in the Cayman Islands, if you go snorkeling after this age, you're on your own, your insurance won't cover it, because I do believe a lot of these people do this just to provide for their family that they're leaving behind. It's a very easy way to do that. But tell them your insurance won't cover you unless you have a certified rescue lifeguard with you. So that way, they come down, the hotels would have the list of different people who are qualified, who are trained, who are there, and some are, not an exorbitant pay like they want $1,000 an hour to be a lifeguard to someone. Provide these services, you're going to also increase revenue for the island, and you're going to increase job opportunity for the young people, and training that will go a long way, even especially in emergency cases such as major catastrophes in the island. Anyway, thank you, Dean, and I'm just going to listen to the rest of your show today.
All right,
Enjoy.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, man. I certainly appreciate it. And it's something that, as the callers share, the safety of our guests, empowerment, potential, the impact on our reputation is of concern. Now, as scheduled, we're honored now to be able to welcome to the studio Mr. Colin Medford. Now, Colin, I know you know, the walk from across the hall has been a long distance, huh? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Well, listen, man, I am blessed. That I don't deny. Hurricane season, we're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And I think the HSA has been very mindful to constantly remind people through the PSAs that we are on your behalf. That sometimes, whether you're traveling or whether it's hurricane season, to make sure that we are prepared. Part of that preparation is making sure our medications are to hand. Huh?
Absolutely, that is correct. We've had some experiences. Well, we've had an experience where we've certainly learned from, and obviously that is the experience with Ivan, where we did stock persons up with quite a bit of medication, and in some cases people got in excess of 2 months of medication. And in the midst of the storm, they lost it all, which placed them at a disadvantage as far as having access to meds are concerned, because then it puts pressure on us to restock them. Plus, there are all the people from around the island who are not normally our patients, because we were open. I think we were probably the only pharmacy open at the time. We then had to take care of everybody on the island, and that led to a rationing situation. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want your main source for meds to be depleted, especially after the storm. And the other thing is that it is quite possible too that some persons may have been cut off because it's only Georgetown Hospital that was open. So it's quite possible that some persons may have been cut off and not having access to the city. May have actually not had their meds with them because they lost them in the storms as well. People did tell us that they lost their meds in the floods, in the flood waters, and they lost everything in some cases.
So as we look at this now, there's a whole issue of the preparation of the individual, making sure that he or she gets the requisite meds to take them through a period of time.
Absolutely.
But then securing them in such a way like you would your passport or anything else of value to you.
It is essential, yes.
Yeah, that you have it.
Yes, we've told them that if when you come to the hospital, make sure you get a month's supply of extra. Nothing more than that, a month's supply extra. In some cases, we'd probably think that 2 weeks would be fine, but everybody's entitled to that month's supply because in most cases you're taking a month's supply, so we don't want to disrupt your normal refill process. So you get a month's supply of meds and you put them in a Ziploc plastic bag, something that you can see. So even if there's water around and it's floating, you can grab it. Some persons may want to go beyond that and use an airtight container like a Rubbermaid if you want to go that far. The important thing is to secure it in an airtight container so it will be dry and accessible. And the good thing about these things is that even if you grab it and it gets away from you, you can see it floating, you can grab it again and have it securely placed in your possession. And that is almost as essential as grabbing your food. I mean, I think perhaps more essential in some cases,
But there are some people who may only have, 1 or 2 meds that they take. There are some that have 1 or 2 meds they take every hour. I mean, they have a lot of medication. So this potentially, for those individuals could be a large bundle.
Yeah, well, the thing is, depending on the amount of meds you have, you buy the container to suit, or you use the container to suit. Ziploc bags come in fairly big sizes. I don't think they come in gallon sizes and so on. But what I would advise them to do is to ensure that as long as you've got a bag and you can keep that bag watertight, then you make sure you mark it, that you will identify it carefully and easily, and have it there. I mean, the lights may go off when you're grabbing everything. Just make sure you've got it someplace where it is accessible and recognizable.
So secure, accessible, that you can have it in case you need to move or if anything happens, at least it'll be secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the important thing. The important thing is, it's a waste of time getting them if you're not going to secure them and have them in a place where you can actually grab them and go, especially if you're going to be evacuating. You need to have it, like you said, your passport. I'm sure very few people will forget their passport behind. So just put it with your passport. Just put put your passport with your meds and make sure that you grab that bag. And that bag is your essential bag. But the important thing is it needs to be watertight. It needs to be airtight.
All right. And this is, when we're making our preparations, we look at that, how this bag, we source it and secure it so that we can have it as a go bag, ready to go. But then when we come back to, what about the issue of the hospital? As a pharmacy, you have to consider your own preparations to make sure that your medications are there for the people after as well.
Absolutely.
So a number of issues for us as the individual, equally for you as an organization.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, we're going to have a chance to speak with the Chief Pharmacist, Mr. Colin Medford. Our phone lines are open. We're going to be talking about hurricane preparedness, and I think many will recognize, better to be safe than sorry. It's an adage that, unfortunately, I think too many of us ignore and otherwise have to be reminded of what our grandparents told us. You can't hear, but you can feel. Well, let's see which category we're going to fall in. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
South Coast Bar and Grill up in Breakers, man, that is the place. For traditional Cayman cuisine, oh, you will love the taste. At South Coast Bar and Grill, we got conch and lobster and turtle stew. And every Sunday, come out with your family for the barbecue.
Join us for Father's Day lunch and dinner from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. On the menu will be Cayman lobster, stew turtle, fried crab, stew elk, stew conch, grilled grouper, local stew beef, and barbecue chicken.
Cuisine, the talk today is South Coast Bar and Grill.
Normally, I get excited when my parents are packing, but not today. That's because there's a hurricane coming this way. So it sounds like we'll be staying at a shelter my mom found months ago when preparing for hurricane season. So let's see what mom's packing for me. Now she has my crate, a week's worth of food and water, my bowls, medications, a first aid kit, my pet records, and photo ID with description, some towels and blankets, a leash, and of course my collar and ID tag. Hey, what about Mr. Snuggles? Don't forget Mr. Snuggles. Thanks, Mom.
Being a responsible pet parent means planning ahead. So make sure you have a safe, pet-friendly place to stay, an evacuation route, and your pet's necessary items. And remember, if it's not safe for you, it's not safe for your pet.
This message endorsed by Breeze 105.3.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. Honored to be able to include in the studio now good company of Mr. Colin Midford as we talk about hurricane preparedness and in particular as we look after our medications. Mr. Colin, we do have a caller online for those who want to join us. Well, 949-8837 or toll free with the compliments of Flo at 1-800-534-TALK. Hey, good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Sterling.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am very thankful and highly blessed. Good afternoon, Mr. Collins.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I thought, Sterling, I'm very thankful and highly blessed. On the all right too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I could talk a little bit about this thing now. On it's all right. Mr. Collins.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a few things that I don't want to put over the air now.
Mm-hmm.
That I will speak to you tomorrow. I have an appointment tomorrow and the day after, God's willing.
Well, you know where to find me. Yeah, that's good.
I know that. I know where to find you. I'd rather talk to you and her, you know. And I guess that you realize that I really like to talk to you.
Absolutely, not a problem.
Okay.
We were just talking about that actually.
Yes, ma'am.
And then look at but I'm going to say this much about the medication.
Mm-hmm.
You know how I like to have mine, not only as the hurricane season.
Mm-hmm.
I like to have my extras all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say just this one, but not the rest of it. There is a female that on the 31st, she was at the West Bay clinic, and I took in this medication. And I said to her, because one now it appears that it is very low in supplies.
Okay.
So I said to her, okay, I need to have double what's there because, you know. And she said, but we don't get no extras. I said, but do you know that it is hurricane season and we need to have the extras? And then she went on it. We don't give no extras. So I said, hello. I'm not holding no argument with you, but I want more. I want double of what you see on that bottle. And I did get it.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest I'll talk to you in person.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. But I'm glad you got it. Well, we have been doing this for a while. We have been doing it for a while as far as the hurricane preparedness is concerned, as at this time of the year especially. And so persons coming to the clinics and so on are entitled to get the extra supply for a month. And we do have some new staff as well. So I mean, we will disseminate the information to all staff, of course, but you're entitled to have that extra month supply. Now, if it is in short supply, it is quite possible that you may not get it at the time when you go there, but we can tell you the possible date of arrival for it if we know that, and if we don't, then unfortunately we wouldn't be able to supply that item until it comes in.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Mom, for that. And now, Colin, with that perspective, is this during hurricane season or only when there is a pending storm?
Mm-hmm.
That when someone comes?
You see, the thing is, one of the things we want to avoid at all costs, we don't want I don't want to label it, but we don't want the supermarket rush.
Yeah.
Because it sets up a very bad situation for our resources as far as staff is concerned. And it sets up a very bad situation for the patients, because patients are now in a line waiting for medicines when they should really be taking care of other things. So what we want people to do is to be proactive. From now, you come and you request your extra 30 days supply, and you get that and you keep it. Now, the important thing to remember is that when you get it, you don't use it. You don't use that supply, you keep. So in essence, people will be getting 2 months supply of meds that one time. One they will continue to use as normal, one they will keep until the end of the hurricane season. At the end of the hurricane season, what we do is we tell them, now don't come for refills in December at the end of the season. Use those refills, and then you can order your refills. And that sort of works out for the month, because December is that month where people are doing other things, though. You're shopping and so on. And that sort of works out. It takes a load off as well as far as the hospital is concerned. But you have that extra supply, so use it. Now, there's another thing I need to say, that the meds that we dispense, we are ensuring that the expiry dates are well beyond those dates that you've got to keep them stored. Mm-hmm. So they need not worry about whether or not they're going to be expired before that date. They need not worry about that, because we're keeping close track of the meds. And the other thing I need to say too is that when you come to the doctor for an appointment, if you come to see your doctor and you are going to see your regular doctor, in fact, anytime you go to the doctor, you should carry all those meds, just in case the doctor changes something. He'd be able to look in the container and tell you, look, this one you're not going to get this time around. I'm changing you. I'm taking you off this. I'm going to put a replacement in, put the prescription, and you take all of that to the pharmacy. And we will see that. That speaks to us volumes, because now we know that you're off one medication that we can take out and replace it with the one that's on the new prescription, which means that even your emergency supplies will be up to date all the time.
So bring our meds on our regular doctor visits.
Yes.
Put them in a container, transport them, and as we see the physician.
But really and truly, people should take their meds to the doctor on all the visits. They should do that. But in this case, it is very important, because we need to update. You can't have a new prescription going, and you've got the same old meds in the box somewhere to use in an emergency. You need to have the meds updated everywhere. So you walk with your meds, and I believe that those doctor visits for most people would not be every month or every 2 months and so on. Some people may have to do that, but there are other people whose appointments are well spaced out, so they probably will see the doctor once again during the season, before the end of the season. And if that's the case, then you bring whatever the visit is, you bring all your meds with you. Even on emergency situations, as long as it happened and you've got access to it, you bring it, or have somebody bring it to the hospital so the doctors can see exactly what you're taking.
That way, saves sort of confusion. You may not be able to recollect at that time. See what's in your hand is what is in the system. So
exactly.
Confirmation.
Exactly. Always need to be up to date.
All right. And this is, as we look at the idea of not just hurricane preparedness, but many people, especially during that time, as you called it, we see a level of panic as people go to supermarkets, for instance. One less thing to sort of be on their minds.
Absolutely. You don't want to wait until a pending situation is on us, and everybody's rushing around, traffic jams and all of that. And it is good for them to do this early and before anything is going on, simply because you also take a lot of the traffic and the transiting off the streets. And we don't want sick people to be on the streets, trying to get their medication and frustrated in lines waiting and so on, because there will be lines. The lines are going to increase because there are other people doing the same thing as you. We're hoping that does not happen, that people will use this time. I call this a quiet period, because we've already seen a little action here and there over the past couple of weeks. And based on the predictions and so on, I think we may have an active season.
Well, we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, well.
Now, with that, Colin, the idea that there are some people who can, despite the and their physical ailment, they can, for themselves, get to the hospital pharmacy, whether it's the district health centers or whether it's the central one. But some, it's a family member, there's somebody else, who sort of takes on that role.
Mm-hmm.
That person likewise will come and
That's acceptable, yes, definitely. And I keep saying the hospital, but like you said, the district clinics are also, they're also able to do the same thing. We're doing it everywhere. As long as you go into the clinic where you request your meds and so on, you can get your refills done there.
All right. Now, people who may have sort of questions, I know that pharmacists generally very accessible. They're right there to answer questions. Sometimes we ask them maybe too much, but they're always available. People who have questions, not just about their meds, but hurricane in relation to their meds. What's the best way? Talk to the pharmacist, talk to their physician?
Yeah, well, you should talk to your caregivers at all times. I mean, your caregivers are there to answer your questions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether you're a pharmacist or not. The caregivers have the responsibility to
they have
ensure
caregivers.
and health caregivers in general. I mean, it doesn't have to be a pharmacist. It could be a doctor. It could be a nurse, whoever it is. There is that burden of dialogue that should go on between patient and caregiver at all times. And the patients have the right to ask as many questions as they want. They need to know what is happening to them, what is being done to fix it, and whether or not they're responding to the care that is being given to them. So it is essential that kind of back and forth dialogue exists between the caregiver and or the healthcare person and the patient.
Especially now too, if there is this sort of preparation for natural disaster, we're talking about hurricane preparedness. There's a level of increased anxiety. People making sure they have everything in order. And now making sure that medication is accessible and available, and they have it if they need to move.
Absolutely. The thing is, at the hospital, we start preparing for this long time ago. I mean, in some cases, we start preparing even before the hospital itself gets the forum together to discuss the needs, the protocols, and so on, and to ensure that everybody is up to speed. In some departments, they start the preparations before that, so that when they get to this meeting, they can safely say, well, in the case of pharmacy, we can safely say, well, we've got certain logistics in place in the event of an incident or something going wrong. We've got certain backup plans in place and so on. And this is an annual ongoing thing that is very it is very essential to our daily practice at the hospital, and it includes all areas. No one is left out of the equation at all. Everybody's involved. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. The protocol is disseminated and updated as well at the hospital by administration, and is sent out to everyone. And then the key players will come and sit down and discuss what they need to take back to their teams and so on. And the preparation involves things like the hurricane centers and the medical relief centers, and who is going to respond, the way in which we interact with hazard management. So it is a very robust plan, and everybody knows their roles.
All right. Well, when we come back from the break, I invite you to continue to share with us some more, as people get, the idea that it is hurricane season. But what can we do to be prepared to make sure that we are safe as possible? Well, 949-8037 or toll free with the compliments of Flo, 1-800-534-8255. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with our Chief Pharmacist, Mr. Colin Midford. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Country classics.
Daughter on the road again. They're gonna put me in the movies.
Papa Top again.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso.
Because you're mine, I walk the line.
Well, I love them in
country classics.
Young love, first love.
You never count your money when you're sitting at the table.
If you
enjoy classic country music, come hang out with Radio Cayman this Saturday, 3:30 to 6 p.m.
In the Mississippi cotton picking Delta town.
This Saturday afternoon, following American Country Countdown, 3:30 to 6 on Radio Cayman.
Just walk on by, wait on the corner.
Country classics.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
The 2018 Women's National Basketball League Finals take center court tonight. Defending champions Tribe Tattoo Lady Warriors stole Game 1 of the 2 best-of-3 finals series, adding pressure to the first-time finalists, National Cement Islanders, who will attempt to stay alive in hopes of forcing a Game 3 or go home. The game is at 6:30 p.m. tonight at the Arc in Cayman Bay. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. A shooting at an internet cafe in the southern Swedish city of Malmö has claimed the lives of 3 men. Several others were wounded in the center of the city late on Monday when at least one attacker opened fire as the victims left the cafe. Monday night's attack, which occurred near a police station, is being linked to gangs and organized crime. Confusion surrounds a claim by former tennis champion Boris Becker that he holds diplomatic status on behalf of the Central African Republic. He asserted last week in London that his appointment as a diplomat by the Central African Republic gave him protection from legal action in a bankruptcy case. The Central African Republic Embassy in Belgium confirmed it had issued him a diplomatic passport. And Will Ferrell will star in a new film about the Eurovision Song Contest for Netflix. The film, which will be called Eurovision, will be set at the music competition. The Anchorman star was at this year's contest and is thought to have been a fan since being introduced to it by his Swedish wife. He's set to write the screenplay with former head writer of Saturday Night Live, Andrew Steele. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen. Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. Call 1-800-534-8255. That's 1-800-534-TALK.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us. In the studio, Chief Pharmacist Mr. Colin Medford joins us. And the idea of hurricane preparations and that act and level of preparedness, I think, is important. Many of us, without question, are starting to appreciate, hey, we got our water, we got our, non-perishable items, we've got our hurricane shutters of sorts. We've done things. We've put some thought into what we can do with our fruit and our pets and the like. Medications should be front and central as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think we've made the point where I've said that persons ought to have them in places which are strategic, where you could pick it up and run with it or move with it. And if you think you're going to forget it, just put things with them that are essential to your survival and moving as well. And then make sure you have everything.
Should be in that bag, whatever format that we secure our medications, watertight, for instance, and accessible. Should we label somehow in that bag, somehow say, listen, medications for, mom, dad, brother.
Well, that's important. It's important that you be able to recognize it and recognize it, mark it in a way that is recognizable to you. Don't put something on it that you'll forget later on. I mean, it is possible. But it is important that you mark it in a way that is recognizable to you so that you will realize that this is something I need to take with me, perhaps more than anything else. And like I said, it's essential that it is watertight, airtight, and easily floatable. So bags come to mind easily because we've got Ziploc bags, but like I said, if you think you want to have you prefer to use a airtight container, make sure it is something that snaps tight, that you covered it, the lid doesn't come off easily, and that as long as you've covered it, it's safe. And again, mark it so you can recognize it.
Right, because many times as a hurricane unfolds or a natural disaster, in a sense, we need to have this thing available to us.
Yeah, we're going into centers sometimes, into shelters really, where you're going to be lots of people with lots of stuff, and in that situation, you don't want to get your stuff misplaced. It is easy to happen. It can happen, and some persons will become confused. We think a lot about the elderly and so on, especially somebody who's traveling alone and they don't have anyone else with them. It is necessary for them or for their kin to make sure that their meds are well secured and accessible.
Now, with that, that's the individual, but from the country's perspective, not looking at the private sector entities, but our own, government facilities, you guys have an incredible task to secure and to procure, make sure that it's accessible now and properly after.
Absolutely. Our procurement takes into consideration the hurricane season. So in order for us to meet the needs or the potential needs or the projected needs of the season, we order to suit through our pharmacy stores, and I believe the materials management, which is the area that handles the medical supplies and so on, they do the same thing. In fact, in many cases, if not most cases, we work in tandem with them as far as the importation and process is concerned and acquisition. And what we will do is ensure that by June, perhaps by May, that we've got the essential meds, the meds that you'll probably want to use in persons who have critical situations, like in CCU circumstances, something that we call the crash cart. We want to always make sure that we've got those meds because those are life-saving items. And as we use them, we replace them. And if you have that situation going on, in a critical event, then it is even more important for us to ensure that we have them. So we try as much as possible to ensure that we've got a good supply of those things, those items. And for the full year around, essential meds, which are critical to survival and to life, sustaining life, we keep them. We have them in stock all the time. There are some things that we never, even if we keep it and it expires, we cannot afford not to have it in stock. And those items are top priority on our list. And they're always in stock. They're always there.
As I listen to you, the public, sort of almost by default, will be relying on the hospital, the government facility, to come and get our maids refilled. After everything, we saw that the private sector entities, for the most part, were devastated and took a while to get back online. I believe the hospital pharmacy was maybe the only one operational for a while.
We were up probably from the same day. The day after, really. The day of the all clear, we were up and that day opened our eyes tremendously because we knew that the island had been devastated. What we didn't realize is that there would have been such a high dependence from everyone whether or not there were our patients, to come to the hospital for their meds. And that, like I said, that placed a considerable burden on us. We were literally giving out meds a week supply, 5 days supply, because we had no choice. And we didn't have, at the time, the means to assess, based on the amount of people we were seeing, we didn't have the means to assess what the needs would have been, because daily we were just being inundated. In fact, we shortened our days to accommodate the process, so we could go in now and check and see what we had, how much we're giving out, how many patients we have on it that we expect to return, who had it, and even in the cases where people got it already, like I said, most of them had lost their meds anyway, so we had to replenish them as well. And we don't want that situation again. We are we're urging persons to take it upon themselves to ensure that they've gotten that extra month supply secured. And even in the private sector, it is the same thing. It is necessary for them to do the same thing. That month's supply will not be wasted. They'll use it again at the end of the season. For us, like I said, our expiry dates will be good, so they can, by all means, go ahead and use those meds, but ensure as well that changes are updated by taking them to their doctor.
If I may ask, Colin, and guide us in this, because I'm not a pharmacist, I didn't even play one on the radio. There are some meds that I gather that people take, and they have to be stored a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us have them in the cabinet on the countertop, and they're okay. They'll stay there until they expire.
Mm-hmm.
But others have to be stored a certain way.
That is absolutely right. And you're looking at things like insulin, even some of the self-administered drugs, injectable drugs. This is the modern era now. People can take home syringes and give themselves medication, and we've got quite a few of those. And brings to mind things like a drug called Humira. And what I will say to persons is you don't need to store that drug at home in excess. That's one of those things that if you don't have it in your possession during an event, the length of time for the event, as well as the ability to store it, even if you take it to a shelter and so on, that's a burden. I wouldn't advise people to get those in advance. I think the hospital is probably the best place for it to be stored. We've got very good facilities. We've got very good storage. We've got a very powerful generator, which has just been upgraded, and it's working and it's being tested continually. So that generator is powerful enough to provide the power we need. And our fridges in the hospital storage are on alarmed timers. So if the electricity goes off, if the fridge isn't working, it's going to alarm. And we've just updated those fridges as well a couple of years ago. So it is best for us to store those meds at the hospital, and when you need them, you come for them. Now, those, even though they're essential to your comfort, the having them in your possession during an event, electricity goes off, you can't store them, you still can't give it to yourself because you really don't know what the condition of the med is after it has been warmed up. And you don't want to take the chance. So those meds, I would say, no, you don't have to collect them. It's tablets, capsules, some liquids. And we will be able to determine these things at the dispensaries. The pharmacists and the pharmacy technicians will be able to determine which items you can take. What we do implore is that people take those that you can, take them, keep them with you. Insulin, on the other hand, is a little different. Because insulin can be stored 30 days at room temperature. So if you're using insulin, as long as it's not being overheated, like you leave it in a car or the place is so hot that, or you put it in an area near to heat, as long as you store it at room temperature in that same container, that's fine. It doesn't have to be in the fridge for 30 days. So insulin sort of breaks the rule a little bit, yes.
So having that conversation with the pharmacist now as we go to refill, even if we think we're very familiar with our medications, gives us a peace of mind. Let you do the storage at the hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. The storage at the hospital is adequate for long-term storage. So it is better for us to have it there so that when you need it and you can get it, it will be there.
Now, with respect, some people listening, without question, are going to pay attention because it affects them. Others, well, and I'm going to worry about it after. Maybe when we come back from the break, could I invite you to help us to appreciate that this isn't just something to pass over. Yeah, it's not just because you're not directly affected by it then and there. You don't have any family members in your household. You shouldn't ignore it and dismiss it. Maybe we can make an appeal. Who knows how that person may come in to help others, a neighbor, maybe just by chance as you move about the community following a natural disaster. For those who are listening, call and share your thoughts with us. Hey, we are Colin Medford, and if you know two things about him, hey, I can easily tell you two more because he's a good guy. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Have a question? Give us a call and share with us. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Satisfy your World Cup cravings at Merengue Town. Now under sole ownership by Mr. Johnny. $15 bucket specials during the game. And after game time, it's party time. With Karaoke Wednesdays, the Friday night party with DJ Bambino. And on Saturday and Sunday, get your sweetness on with DJ Sugar. Enjoy free finger foods and soup. And don't forget about the fried fish specials. Only at Merengue Town. Located in Georgetown on Boilers Road off Walkers Road. Merengue Town. It's time. Feel the rhythm. Time to feel the vibes. It's time for Merengue Town.
When it comes to illegal guns in Cayman, you have two choices. Either face 7 to 10 years in prison or turn in illegal guns in between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. during the RCIPS firearms amnesty in the month of June. You can bring guns to the police station, confidentially give it to a pastor of your choosing, or anonymously send a tip about where a gun is through Crime Stoppers. Visit us at www.rcips.ky to learn more.
This message is brought to you by the Lions Club of Grand Cayman.
Are you a beneficial owner of an ordinary resident company? If you own 25% or more of the shares, the voting rights, or have control of the board of directors, you are a beneficial owner. This means that by 30th June, government needs you to give them a few details about the ownership of your company. By providing these details, you'll stay on the right side of compliance. Don't worry. Filing with the registry is easy. Just log on to the Cayman Business Portal at cbp.ky and follow the simple steps. Again, visit cbp.ky to file your beneficial ownership information by the 30th of June. For more information, contact cigenreg@gov.ky or help@cbp.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. 949-8037 or toll free with the compliments of Flo at 1-800-534-8255. In the studio, Chief Pharmacist at the Health Services Authority, Mr. Colin Medford, joins us. And as we talk about hurricane preparations and being prepared for that natural disaster, especially a hurricane, our medications are important. For some people, they need that, whether it's hypertension or some other issue. They need to have their meds.
Yes. And I think we need to clarify because when we talk about meds, we're talking about chronic meds, things that people take every day to keep going, to survive. And Julie, so you just mentioned hypertension, and that's one of those things that you would want to ensure that you have. Hypertension, diabetes, asthma, epilepsy, and any of those conditions, people who are taking oral chemotherapy and so on, you'd want to ensure that you have your meds secured. Now, some of these conditions as well, if you're attending your doctor and he's placed you on something for 2 weeks to ensure that, to make sure that this is what he wants you to take, to see what the response is going to be, then that's not essential med at the time. It'll become an essential med if he decides to keep you on it. But if he decides that he's not going to keep you on it and you've gone and gotten double the amount, then that doesn't. We're not going to give it anyway.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so I just need people to think clearly and understand that these are the medicines that we're talking about. We're not talking about things like paracetamol unless you're taking it for arthritis. If you've got chronic arthritis, then you need to take pain medicines, part of your monthly prescription, absolutely, but not any and every medication.
If I may ask them just for that, so appreciate you emphasizing this is medications that people take on an ongoing basis. It's meds that they need every, I guess, day or sometimes more than twice. Once a day. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're meds they may take once a month or once a week, but have that made available to you. Right? What about a case where someone has been to the physician? And the physician has, in your case, has put a person on a particular medication for this time. and an impending storm. They've got a week, let's say, left for that med. They should secure that as well. Antibiotic, for instance.
Yes. No, that brings us to a very good point. Now, if there's a storm coming, you've not come and collected your month's supply extra, and the storm is coming, and you've just gotten a month's supply. Doesn't make sense coming to the hospital for that extra month's supply, because if you've got in excess of a month and the storm is expected to come in a couple of days or so, you have medication that is going to take you beyond the storm. So in that case, for that situation, it doesn't make sense rushing to the hospital, because two things. One, we can look in the system and see when you last got a refill. And if you've last gotten a refill last week or days before, we'll see that, and we certainly wouldn't give you extra meds for a whole month at that time. And it is critical to understand that when we invite people to come and get those meds, it is like now, when nothing is happening. If you've got a month's supply last week and the storm is expected to hit us on Saturday, we're not going to give you extra meds at that time. And the simple reasoning is because you've got enough medication to take you beyond the event, in event of a storm. What you need to do is to secure those meds that you have in the same way as you would for those items that you get as an emergency supply. And after the storm now, after the event, whatever has taken place or not taken place, depending on the conditions, depending on what has happened, then you can make that decision to make sure, look, if this happens again, I want to make sure I've got enough to take me right out for the season. The other thing is, if we are in November, and around October, November, and the persons are getting their meds, and there has not been an event, we will not give that emergency supply. We will not give that emergency supply so near to the end of the season, because it wouldn't make sense. Like I said, it's the same situation happening. You've got enough meds to take you beyond the month, perhaps into the first 2 weeks of December.
Right.
And then we would just implore that people put those meds in a safe place.
Secure
the same
way. As you shared, Colin, the idea that perhaps one of the safest places would be to let the hospital, the HSA, secure that for us. What about the instances? There are some people who, as part of their hurricane preparedness, they'll take care of their businesses, their homes, whatever here, but they